My name's Adrian with Shorecast Studio, and this is my first devlog for our upcoming 2D action adventure game, Ozudo. Now, this devlog may be a bit unconventional because I'm not actually a programmer. I'm handling the majority of the artistic side of the project, including directing, level design, music, writing, and conceptual art. So, yeah, I'll be delving more into the design and creative process of making a game rather than the nuts and bolts of programming it. So, what is Ozudo and how did it come about? Ozudo is basically my attempt to give myself what I've been missing in the current open world Zelda games. If I had to compare it to anything, I'd say it's a blend between the classic Zelda formula and Celeste. And it began about 5 years ago as a linear platformer called Marion. At the time, my brother and I were living together, and he was learning how to program in GameMaker. And he started telling me about this game idea he had about a shadowy being having to escape a mysterious Japanese-themed city in order to find salvation in the countryside. Now, I've always been drawn to the storytelling possibilities and immersive elements of video games, but I never thought that making one was actually possible until my brother started showing me some early Marion prototypes. And once I saw those, I latched on pretty quickly and began offering level design ideas, which weren't very good because I didn't know what I was doing. And I also started composing music. And before we knew it, a year went by and we had a 40-minute demo. At the time, we thought the only way to legitimately get our game off the ground was through a publisher. So we did some research and sent off our demo to a bunch of publishers, and well, none of them were interested. But we learned a lot and got some good feedback. And with that, we decided to shelve Marion temporarily in order to focus on a smaller, more commercial game. That led us to creating a silly little platformer where you play as this stick of dynamite trying to cross a fiery canyon that's crawling with a bunch of anthropomorphic, inanimate enemies. Like we had lit matches and an evil magnifying glass and burning kamikaze marshmallows, which was one of my favorites. If you guys would like to know more about that project, please let me know and I can make a video about it. Anyway, though the Dynamite game was a fun idea and an enjoyable change of pace from Marion, after less than a year or so of working on it, my brother and I decided it was lacking heart. So we dusted off Marion, which we both had a much bigger attachment to thematically and aesthetically, and I started to rework the gameplay loop and push it in more of a classic Legend of Zelda direction. I'm a big fan of the classic Zelda formula that was used in the Zelda games of the early 2000s and 90s, because I feel like the dichotomy between the overworld exploration and the Metroidvania-esque dungeons made for just great pacing and variety in the gameplay. But I digress. It was at this time that I also started infusing a lot of lore and fantasy elements into the game. And, like a lot of people out there, I struggle with anxiety and depression off and on. So I started weaving my struggles into the themes of the game as well. So, where are we at now? Well, it's been over a year now since we delved back into Marion, and we've made a decent amount of progress. We obviously changed the name of the game to Ozudo, which I felt better represented the game as a whole, but the biggest gameplay change that was made was to add Zelda-style dungeons. And now that I've attempted such a feat, I would highly recommend that you do not follow in my footsteps. I'm joking, of course, but just be prepared for a really grumpy programmer on your team. But yeah, I figured that if I could design a dungeon that at least somewhat approached the look and feel of a classic Zelda dungeon, then the rest of the game would fall into place. Now, as I said before, I am not a programmer, and if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm not much of a computer guy either, which is hilarious because, I'm making a video game. But I like to design all of my levels and areas ahead of time by hand. Then when I think they're good enough, I'll build and test them in Unity, which is the engine we're using. I'm all about preparation, and I've always been a nerd, an absolute nerd about pre-production and storyboarding in film. So I planned and conceptualized the entire first dungeon for Ozudo long before I actually built it. I even had friends test my designs by playing a pseudo D&D version of it. It was pretty cool. I'd show them the concept art of each room and then ask them what they wanted to do next. And, they'd tell me, and then I'd let them know if they were correct or wrong and yada, yada. It was fun. It was very insightful as well. So at this current point in time, the first dungeon is pretty much completely built and playable. I've been testing it with some friends, and yeah, it's really starting to feel good. And I'm getting really, really excited about it. There's still no art and limited sound design for everything because we decided to focus more on the core gameplay. And once that's feeling really good, we'll start throwing in all the pretty stuff, all the fun stuff. And the end goal is for it to look very similar to our original Marion demo. What I'm working on right now at this very moment is building and testing the rest of the areas leading up to the first dungeon. And the goal is to put out a demo on Steam within the year that would allow players to play the beginning of the game all the way up to the end of the first dungeon. And the overall goal for the game, what I envision, is to have 3 to 4 dungeons interspersed throughout the overworld, which sounds small, I know, but it's a very ambitious goal for a small team like us. So yeah, if you have any thoughts, questions, or ideas about how we can improve Ozudo in any way, I'd love to hear from you. As I've said, we're an extremely small team, so getting different perspectives and thoughts would be super insightful and helpful. Also, I just want you guys to keep in mind that though I've made a few comparisons between Ozudo and Zelda, I don't want you to expect a Zelda game because, that's impossible to make unless you're a Nintendo. So, yes, Ozudo is inspired by Zelda, but it's also inspired by many other games. I mentioned Celeste earlier. And just know that it'll be much smaller and it'll be different. For one, it doesn't even have a combat system. We've grown pretty tired of the hack and slash nature of Metroidvanias. The amount of enemies you normally have to fight your way through to navigate the world, it just gets tedious to us. So we reduced the number of enemies you come across in Ozudo to give them more value. And instead of fighting them, you'll have to evade or hide from them. If you're still here and awake, thank you so much for hanging in there all the way to the end. I really appreciate your interest in the project. If this video has been helpful to you in any way, please hit that like button because it'll help others find it. And I'll be posting devlog updates and other game dev videos every month, so please subscribe if you're interested in seeing Ozudo progress. And if you'd like to connect with us on Discord or itch.io, I'll make sure to put some links in the description below. That's all I got. Thanks, guys.